Hey guys, GoForce Online here to bring you another one of my trash builds. Now this is my Sorcerer Lightning DPS. So since I did my build with the Dragon Knight with only using flame damage, I thought I'd try something similar with the Sorcerer. Now the Sorcerer is not nearly as effective as the Dragon Knight was with flame damage, so there's not a reason to just use shock damage. I thought I'd just do it for this build. Alright, let's take a look. So I've got about 36k max Magika there and 19k max health. So nice resource pools to pull from. Spell damage sitting at about 3,400, so buffed it goes up to about 4k. I've got about 16k and 14k spell and physical resistance, which is fairly average for a damage dealer. I'm using the Apprentice Munderstone, so it increases my spell damage, and using max health, max Magika food. Alright, let's take a look at the item sets. So the first one I'm using here is a Lambria's Visage. So when you deal flame or shock damage, you have a 33% chance to summon a meteor shower that deals that damage type for 2,900 damage to all enemies within 4 meters every 1 second for 5 seconds. Wow, that's a bit of a mouthful. Anyway, since I'm only using shock damage and I'm using a lot of damage over time and AOE skills, that 33% shock proc chance definitely activates very frequent. The next one I'm using here is Overwhelming. So when you deal damage with a class ability, you surround yourself with a torrent that deals 1,400 shock damage to enemies within 8 meters of you every 1 second for 6 seconds. There's a 15% chance that the damage that I deal is restored as Magika to me. So nice little extra damage there, and also restoring some Magika, which just increases my overall resources that I can use. Then the last one here is the Succession. So whenever you deal flame or shock damage or frost, you gain 492 spell damage for that element for 4 seconds. Each effect can occur every 4 seconds. So since I'm using a lot of damage over time and AoE abilities, using a lot of shock damage, that 4 seconds definitely have 100% uptime. Okay, let's take a look at these skills. So the first one here is Liquid Lightning, which is a class skill. So it deals 1,700 shock damage to all enemies in the area every 1 second for 14 seconds. It also has a synergy that deals 8,600 shock damage to enemies around you when an ally activates it. So a nice little damage over time there. Next one I have here is Storm Pulsar from the weapon skill line. So it deals 7,100 shock damage initially and applies Minor Mangle, reducing the max health of the enemies by 10% for 10 seconds. Now this is the only way to apply Minor Mangle to enemies. It doesn't apply to boss enemies unfortunately, but definitely to trash mobs, which reduces their overall max health. Another thing to note here, that in the Destruction Staff skills, if you have like Unstable Wall or Destructive Reach or Pulsar, it says it does magic damage. So see there, 1024 magic damage, 3,123 magic damage, but whatever staff you have equipped, that's the damage it actually does. So if I have a flame staff, that becomes flame damage. If I have a lightning staff, it becomes shock damage, and if it's frost staff, then it becomes ice damage. So looking at the pulsar here, it says magic damage, but looking here, then it says shock damage. So just something worth noting there as well. The next skill I'm using here is Unstable Wall, also from the Destruction Staff skill line. So it deals 1,500 shock damage to the enemies in the target area and sets concussed enemies off balance. So concussed is a status effect that has a chance to apply if you deal shock damage. So dealing a lot of shock damage, concussed definitely gets applied to enemies, and then they are off balance for that 7 seconds. If the effect ends, when the effect ends, the barrier explodes, dealing 7,300 shock damage. Now, if you do spam this skill, that 7,300 applies every single time. So if you're unsure about your rotation or you activate the skill a little bit earlier than the 10 seconds duration, the skill won't punish you for that. And then Shock Reach, also from the weapon skill line. So it deals 4,400 shock damage and additional 10,700 shock damage over 10 seconds. So it deals initial damage and then damage over time on top of that. Then I have the Volatile Familiar from the class skill line. So the pet does 1,300 shock damage, and it can also activate its ability for 2,900 Magika, which means that it deals 2,900 shock damage every 2 seconds for 10 seconds to all enemies around him. The final pulse also stuns enemies for 3 seconds. So having the pet there and then the pet doing AOE damage on top of that definitely increases my overall damage output. Then the ultimate I'm using here is also from the weapon skill line. So create a storm that takes 2 seconds to build and then deals 10,000 shock damage every 1 second for 7 seconds. So the ability lasts 2 seconds longer for using a lightning staff. So it has an area of effect. Once you activate the storm, anything in this area just takes that solid 10k damage. So not a lot of things would survive that. Alright, now looking at the back bar. So mostly use skills for specific situations or self buffs. So you'll be spending a lot more time on the front bar and just swapping back to the back bar if you need to reapply buffs or if you need to use certain skills at certain situations. So the first one I have here is Mage's Wrath. So it deals an initial 3,400 shock damage, and if an enemy falls below 20% health within 4 seconds of being struck by this explosion, it deals 12,000 shock damage to them and 5,900 shock damage to other enemies in the area. So if you've got trash mobs, activating this skill and then dropping the health down to that 20% and it procs and just kills them instantly, which is really nice. Also a very nice execution skill if you're in PvP. Next one I have here is Critical Surge. So it grants me Major Sorcery, increasing my spell damage by 20%. And also dealing critical damage heals me for 3,300 health. This can occur once every second. So since I'm doing a lot of damage over time and a lot of AoE damage, the chances of me doing critical damage is very high. So this effect will constantly activate and just replenishes my health bar there if I'm losing any health. The next one I have here is Boundless Storm. So it deals 1,200 shock damage every 1 second for 23 seconds. And also while this effect is activated, it increases my physical and spell resistance by 5,200, which is really nice for that extra resistance. And also activating the skill increases my movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds. So if I'm running into trouble and need extra resistances, I'll activate this skill. But using it as a damage over time skill, it's very difficult because you need to be in close proximity there. Then the next one here is Dark Conversion. So you restore 8,000 health and 3,600 Magika instantly, and an additional 2,400 Magika over 20 seconds. So this is a skill that takes stamina and then converts it into health and Magika. So a very nice skill to have. I don't use any skills using stamina, so pulling from the stamina pool is very easy, and then changing it to Magika and health. So it keeps my sustain very high and definitely makes this a viable build. And then just a Volatile Familiar again, just so using it on both sides so it doesn't get unsummoned if you do bar swap. Then the Charge Atronach is the final ultimate I'm using. Upon arrival, it deals 9,900 shock damage and stuns enemies for 3 seconds. The Atronach also does 5,400 shock damage to the closest enemy every 1 second, and periodically deals 9,900 shock damage in an AoE area around it. It also drops a synergy once activated, and if an ally activates that synergy, the Atronach and the ally gain Major Berserk, increasing their damage done by 25% for 8 seconds. So that's really nice. A lot of allies would be looking for that synergy because that 25% damage boost is really nice. Alright, let's take a look. So you have your first AOE skill there. Then you have the Pulsar, which reduces the max health by 10%. Then you have the Barricade or the Wall. If you activate it early, it just deals that initial damage instead of just the damage over time. So you can spam that skill and get that damage. Then you've got the Lightning Lob, as I like to call it. So it deals additional damage instantly and then damage over time. Then activating the Pet skill deals damage around the area once every 2 seconds. Then the Back Bar. So Mage's Wrath, very specific. If they've got 20% health left, definitely activate this one. Activating the Surge to get my weapon and spell damage up, get my resistances up with the lightning form, and then to restore Magika there, and healing. Alright, that's it from me guys, thanks for listening. If you like the content I'm putting out, please hit that like, subscribe. If you have any ideas for builds that I need to do in the future, please let me know in the comments down below. Take care and be safe. Bye.